Do you want to get started?
Sure, happy to.
Great.
All right, great. Thank you, Crystal. This is what we both look like. And so I'm the president of the Research and Insights platform here at QuestionPro. Crystal heads up marketing. So we're excited to bring this webinar to you today. You'll hear from Crystal a little bit later during our Q&A section. She'll be helping me run that. But in the meantime, let's get started with the webinar. So the QuestionPro research platform, just to reiterate, is a suite of tools from surveys, communities, audience, to also services and partnerships that allow you to get your insights done that you need to. So from powerful survey platform that includes custom point, click logic, advanced question types, everything you need to derive insights. Communities, we have a fully baked communities platform where you can manage and maintain a hyper engaged community of your brand's top promoters. You can co-create with them. There's qualitative and quantitative insights there as well. And just a little bit of a sneak peek or kind of an FYI, we are going to be releasing video discussions later this month. So that is part of our communities module, but it's something that we're definitely excited about. And then if you need people to take your survey, we can find them, and we have panels that we use for audience. And so definitely, if you haven't used our audience platform, I would recommend giving us a try. We can give you great deals on that as well. And then services and partnerships. So if you need some help with your projects, you run into a jam, let us know. We can do everything from programming to reporting. With that, let's get right into it. So today I want to talk about survey logic, and we'll talk about why respondent experience matters. We'll talk about the different types of logic available inside of the QuestionPro platform, how to enhance respondent experience, benefits, and then I'll jump into a live demo where I'll show you where you can find some of these different logic types, and then also briefly how to use them. So why respondent experience matters? Obviously with logic, there's many reasons for it. One, to ask respondents to answer questions that are relevant to them. We'll get into it more later, but terminating responses, randomization, block randomization, and so forth. There's many different types of logic there, but essentially what we see is it leads to a lower dropout rate and higher completion rate. So this is something that I think every survey wants, that people that come into the survey and that qualify to take it are completing it. And this is because you're asking those folks relevant questions to them, and so they're more likely to complete it. Honest responses equal better data collection. So we want to reduce bias. We want the best data collection possible. So this gets at the heart of that. And then helps reduce respondent fatigue. So we all know that survey length definitely is a factor. And by using logic, you can take people into the correct path. So it reduces the fatigue that they have when they're taking a survey, helps reduce length as well, and then increases respondent loyalty. If there's a well-crafted survey with good logic options, they'll be more likely to take that survey again in the future, so especially if you're surveying to, maybe it's your members or your customers and you have a list that you frequently survey. You want to make sure that this is paramount so that they continue taking it and you do get those high response rates over time. So some smart survey best practices here. So you can do this before you're programming your survey, or you're kind of mapping it out just to make sure. Check to see if logic is available for that question type. Most questions inside of the QuestionPro platform have some logic capability. Obviously, some have other capabilities depending on the question type and so forth. Like a select one might have a few different logic options than a multiple choice, matrix, etc. Map it out. So we see some of the best surveys inside of QuestionPro that are created have the logic and criteria mapped out ahead of time, whether that is a flow chart, the logic criteria is already thought of when you have developed the survey. And so it makes it easier to program inside of QuestionPro when it's mapped out. For a good testing experience, you can apply security or anti-ballot box options after the testing stage is done. This will allow you to go into that link multiple times, so you're not having to constantly fight some of these different options where you can only take that survey one time. And then set testing protocols, Q&A multiple times before deployment, just to make sure that logic is set correctly and that it's performing, it's taking the correct paths that you want it to take. So this can be done via obviously testing out the link. You can view logic flowcharts and things inside of QuestionPro as well. But these are 4 of the best practices that we see before actually launching a survey to make sure that your logic is set up correctly. All right, so the different types of logic that we have available within QuestionPro, and we'll definitely dive more into each one of these, but I'll go over them here and just to kind of give you a roadmap of what we'll be talking about. So we have skip logic, compound branching, show hide questions, show hide options, quota control, dynamic comments, extraction, which is actually one of my favorites, scoring, JavaScript logic, and then logic where you can update variables as well.
I didn't
So,
realize, Dan,
yeah,
that it
go
was
ahead.
that you could have a favorite type of survey logic.
Oh, you can
know.
have a favorite type of everything, and extraction is definitely one of my favorite. Well, that or block randomization, it's kind of a toss up, but
Good to know. I'll get you some
yeah,
building blocks for your
you
birthday.
should really get your favorite. I'm surprised you don't have one already.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. You keep going.
It's okay. The extraction actually is one of our most popular logic options. So where you can automatically extract the selected answers into a follow-up question. So this can be done or based on selected or those answers that are not selected. There's multiple different options that you can do here, but typically on extraction, it's those that are selected. And then compound delayed branching is useful for applying logic later on in your survey. So you can base logic off of multiple different criteria, previous responses, etc., and then apply that logic later in the survey to be branched to or skipped or even terminated. Question randomization. So pick one set of questions out of a block of questions to randomly have each respondent answer those. So that's question randomization within inside of block. Then we also have block randomization where you can set up multiple blocks of questions and then decide which ones are randomly shown. So this works well in different types of product concept testing, and in addition to reducing survey length where you can randomly show one or multiple blocks to respondents. So you can reduce the amount of survey fatigue there as well. All right, let's get into each one of the different logic options and we'll go over it just so we all have a good frame of reference here. So skip logic, this is what I would call your most basic logic where you can essentially select what an answer option, what you want it to do. Do you want it to terminate? Do you want it to jump to a question later in the survey? You can also set up piping text here. You can assign custom variables. I'll go over this in the demo just to give a good frame of reference, but skip logic is, I would say, the most basic type of logic that's definitely needed on the majority of surveys. Compound branching, so I mentioned this on the last slide, but uses multiple values to customize the survey path. You can set conditions based on question or multiple parameters, other questions as well, and then you can apply those multiple criteria and conditions to a question to get the logic that you need. Definitely more kind of takes skip logic and makes it a little bit more advanced. Then we have show hide questions where you can show or hide questions based on previous answers so that you're only showing or consequently hiding these questions based on those. So that way respondents, if they can't answer a question or based on their previous responses, they don't need to answer that question, it'll hide it there. And then you could do the same thing with answer options as well. So you can hide irrelevant answer options on a particular question, and you can do those based on different criteria that you can set inside of the survey. We have dynamic comments. So this allows an open-ended text box to be displayed dynamically. So if you have either, let's say, a single select or multi-select question, and based on if they select an answer, you want to ask a follow-up question, maybe why did you select that? It'll dynamically display below the question. So it's a good way to ask a follow-up question without technically having to program another question, and it makes it a little bit more interactive as well. And then we have extraction. So we've talked a little bit about this, but you can create options for the following question automatically based on the selected answers. There's many different types of extraction logic or question types that you can extract into, from rank order, multi-select. There's a number, and we'll definitely go over that here in a little bit. And then we have scoring. So you can apply scores to questions and then either display an overall score. You can use logic based on scoring. So if they answer above a certain score, they get one path. If they answer below a certain score, they get another path. Or you can, based on that score, you can skip questions. You can do a number of different things with scoring logic, and it's definitely handy if you have a quiz or different screening tests and you want to allocate points. You can have that total point value show up in the data set as well. So if you're doing any sort of assessment, it's a good way to keep track of the score automatically. And then we have JavaScript logic. So generally if it's used if the native logic options within QuestionPro aren't up to the standard, or you can't achieve the logic that you want by those methods, you can use JavaScript logic inside of QuestionPro. We won't be really covering that today, but just know that that is an option inside of the platform. And then you can also use logic to update variables. So you can save respondent-specific or general information. You can use values in logic conditions of the following question to decide survey flow. You can store values in custom variables and then recall those later in the survey. So almost like a, kind of a copy and paste type thing. You can do that with updating custom variables and then again recalling that later. So a number of different use cases for that. So some other ways you can use logic, and this is just a little bit of a recap here, but to seamlessly disqualify unrelated respondents. So if you're looking for people that like dogs and they don't say that they like dogs in a particular question, you can terminate them so that you're only asking that survey of people who like dogs. You can curate personalized experiences. So based on how a respondent answered a particular question, you can take them down different paths that relate to their direct experience. So you can make sure that the respondent is answering the questions that are most relevant to them. Streamlining your data set, which I think is a big key. So you're not asking irrelevant questions to respondents, and consequently you don't have to clean up your data or making sure that you're not analyzing those responses. It'll streamline that data set to make sure you have the cleanest data possible. And then it creates concise surveys, right? It reduces the length of the survey because not everyone is being asked each question, and you're tailoring that experience to each one of the respondents taking the survey. All right, so let's jump into a little bit of a real life example here, and we'll talk about Pizza Jerk. So Portland, Oregon pizza chain is looking to get restaurant feedback at 4 locations. So they conduct a customer satisfaction survey for Pizza Jerk's restaurant experience. They want location comparison as well. How do customers from Portland compare to those in Beaverton, Oregon? And then they want to show or hide questions and answer based off location, rating of service, and features, etc. So how might they go about this? So there's some best practices when thinking about logic setup and flow reporting to make sure that all of this is thought out ahead of time. So there's the survey planning, which is obviously on the far left there. And then some of the different steps underneath that would be to identify segments to target, write specific questions for each one of those segments, and then map the logic or workflow externally. So it could be which location were you at? Were you at Portland or Beaverton? And then how is your experience? Based on that, you could ask, some different follow-up questions that get at the root if their experience was good or bad and why it was so. And then there's programming. So build all the questions in QuestionPro and then add logic and survey settings second. So that's the way that I have found in terms of practical application is get all the questions in there and then you can go back and apply the logic. It seems to make the most sense and reduces the amount of, I think, errors that I've seen in some surveys that have been programmed inside of QuestionPro. and then apply those security settings like the ballot box stuffing and so forth. So after you're done testing. So you want to create a QA process for all logic applied to make sure that the paths that that you want a respondent to go down it's correct, and that they're not going down a irrelevant path. Use real people to test the survey. I think that's kind of the best way to go about it. And then make all changes prior to the official launch. So making sure that you have that good testing process handled before you actually launch the survey, so you're not having to change the survey after launch, which can lead to messy data sets. And then obviously one of the advantages of logic is to have a streamlined data set. So that'd be a little bit counterintuitive there. Analysis, so you want to create, segment, and filter based on the existing logic criteria. So you can create these different segments inside of the reporting capability using essentially the same criteria that you would use to program logic. You can use some of those same criteria to do some analysis and segment. And then report on data collected based on those segments identified and the logic applied. So those would be some of the key segments that you identified early on would be some of those key segments that then you can use in the reporting. And then customize automated reports based on the logic or segments. So you can do that based on the different logics and the different segments. You can customize the reporting there. All right, so let's jump into a live demo, and I will show you a few examples within QuestionPro and where you can find it, a little bit about how to set it up, and then we will bring it back after the demo for some live Q&A. So that's where we're at in the webinar process. So what I'll do is I'll start out here in this the survey that I have called extraction. So here I'll show you some of the different logic that I was talking about and then where you can find it. And so we all have a good frame of reference here. So if I hit logic on this question, you can see in this dropdown all of the different logic options that are available to me in this question. And this is the majority of them actually. So skip logic, that's this here. So it's basic skip logic in terms of, you know, if they say football, where do I want them to go after that to a follow-up question? Do I want to terminate them? Do I want to go to a thank you page? And you can do that for each one of these options. If you're using piping, you can put in the piping text here that then you would want to show up in the following questions. And if you wanted to save these answers into a custom variable, you can do that here by selecting which custom variable you want that value to be saved into. If there's a few things here that I'll show you that are really handy is that default branching. So you can select that if no default branching is selected, you can have it automatically jump to a particular question or terminate the survey. So let's say you were looking for people that were football, baseball, basketball, you had particular questions you wanted to ask each one of those. In Formula One or soccer, you wanted to terminate. Well, rather than setting all these options, you can just come here and go to terminate survey, and then we'll terminate for each one that doesn't have a logic option assigned to it. And then there's branching randomizer, so you can limit the choices. So let's say there's 10 different options here, and each one has its own path, but I don't want a respondent to go through all 10 of those paths. I only want them to go through 3. So maybe you would select 3. So randomly choose 3 of the options that are selected and take them down those different paths. And then compound delayed branching, oops, let me jump back here. I'll jump into another question type there to go down to show you compound delayed branching. But if we jump to extraction logic here, this is where we can set up extraction logic. So you can go into extract, and this is where you can select what you want to extract into the following question. So do you want the selected choices, the not selected choices? Do you want displayed choices, not displayed choices, or do you want all choices to be extracted? And then here's where you can select the question type. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a multitude of different question types available to you that you can extract into. And you can even do like extraction on extraction. So, double extraction essentially is another option that you can do. But you can extract into a single select, multi-select, a drop-down, single row, multi-row, numeric input, email address, and so forth. So many different types of extraction logic here that you can do. And I think I've set a record for the number of times I said extraction in the last minute. So for anybody who's keeping score, that's there too. So that's extraction logic. And then to set that, you would set that up again, and then under that section. And then from there, you would just hit save extraction logic. And then it automatically creates the question. So here I have one already set up, which this question is, which of the following sports do you like? And then based on the answer options that are selected here, this rank order will show up for the options that were selected. So that you can rank your top choice of those selected. So you can do sort of an aided and unaided awareness there too. Or you can, based on the answer options selected, then you can rank those options. So a couple different things you can do with extraction, and then you can even do extraction on extraction as well. So you have, which of the following pets have you owned? Dog, cat, rabbit, snake, bird, horse, turtle. What's your favorite pets? And then of your favorite pets, rank those pets. So kind of a double extraction that you can do there. You can see this extraction on extraction code there. So that's something you can do. Let me jump into another survey here that I have that I'll show you some different block randomization, question randomization, and so forth. So this survey has different blocks. Now, depending on your license type, you may not have blocks. Blocks are available on the Research Edition license type, and that may be why you've never seen blocks before. If you want to use blocks, you do need to be on the Research Edition, which we can obviously help you out with. But anyway, so blocks here, you can do a number of different things. So each one of these blocks has different amounts of questions in them. So consumer confidence is one block, which has 7 questions. Life in the time of Corona has 6 questions, 7, and so forth. And I can do a number of different things here. So based on these questions here, inside of this block, I can randomize the questions within the block. So I can randomly display all the items from the list below. I can randomly display, maybe I want to display 2 questions from the list below, or I don't want to display any of the items. So you can randomize the questions within a block by doing these different options here as well. And then another thing that you can do is we have block flow logic as well. So you can add logic to particular blocks. So I can add logic here. I can say if a question is answered a certain way, if a system variable is has a certain response to it, geolocation, if they came from a particular email list, or if they have a device type, I can choose what I want to do with these different blocks. So I can easily, drag the different blocks inside here and, only apply the logic to those blocks here. You can do a number of different things here. And this would, again, is for each one of these different blocks to have logic based on at a block level there. Okay, so if I come into one of these questions, you can see here that these are all matrix questions. I'll show you, let's get to a question here. Okay, so we can go to logic here, and there's compound delayed branching, which I can set a criteria, and I can base this off all of those different options as well. So if I want to base it off a question, let's say, going back to question 1, and this question is overall, how well are things going in the different areas of your life? So let's say I want to create this criteria that if they answered 7 through 10, then if this criteria is met, then we can apply this logic here. You can add additional criteria. So if you want multiple criteria or different, you can add those sorts of things. So if they did, maybe they answered a certain question a certain way and they have a certain device, you can do that as well, and then apply that compound branching. And then if the criteria is met, you can choose to, what do you want to do? Do you want to skip? Do you want to terminate? You can do those different things to apply that logic from previous answers, system variables, information that you have carried into the survey. You can apply that logic there as well. So a little bit more advanced than skip logic, because you can base it off the certain set of criteria there. And then similarly is the show hide question and then options as well. So you can essentially set that same criteria. So based on the questions, based on how they answered a particular question, you can choose to show or hide questions as well. And the nice thing is, once you create the different criteria, you can use them again on multiple questions. So once you create a criteria one time, you can save it, and then you can use that criteria again on other logic options or show hide options, whatever that might be. You can save the criteria so you can easily use it again if you need to. All right, so I think those are the main types of logic options that I wanted to show. If there's questions on others, we can definitely handle that in the Q&A, or if you need me to go into something a little bit more in detail, I can do that as well. So just to recap some of the next steps. So logic is available for all license types, from Essential, Advanced, Enterprise, and Research Edition. Research Edition, and I think the more you go up from Essential to Research Edition, more different types of logic options will be available to you, more advanced options. So that may be, if you're on Advanced or Enterprise, you may not see all of the logic options that are available in the Research Edition. And then resources are available to you. So there's help file, there's video recordings, the slide deck. You can always go on chat support. If you have a customer success member or enterprise support, you can always ask them questions about logic as well. And I'll give you some resources here in a little bit on some different areas where you can get more help if you need it. And to get started, I would connect with your support or sales to test out new features. And if you like this training, let me know what else you would like to learn. So we'll be doing these trainings. We've done some on logic and many others, but if there's something that you want to know more about, chances are someone else does too. So we definitely would love to get feedback on what else you would like to learn. And then with that, any questions that have come in, Crystal, that maybe I can answer while we have a little bit of time here?
Yeah. So we have a few. One's about looping logic.
Okay.
Can I loop through the logic for multiple options?
You can, yeah. So if you have a multi-select, and then based on that, you want to loop those people through additional questions based on their answers, you can do that. So if I go back to, let's go back here, and I can just so everyone understands what I'm talking about here. So if I have this question, which of the following sports do you like? And I select football, baseball, and Formula One, I can then have a set of follow-up questions that I want to loop people through for each one. So that is definitely possible. And I know I won't go into it today, but we do have a good help file on how to set up looping as well. So we make it really easy for folks to do that.
That's awesome. Oh, here's a good one. Is it possible to save rules across different surveys? So if you've made a rule in one survey and then you try to use it again in a new survey, is that possible? Or do you just have to?
Yeah, it's on a survey level. So okay. You can see all of the different logic criteria that you've created on a survey here. If you go view logic criteria, it'll be listed out here. So you can see.
But you can't save it across surveys.
No.
It's only per survey. Okay.
Correct. Yep, yep.
Here we go. Can I show a custom page based on the score of the respondents?
If you're using scoring, yeah, you can show a custom page. Like if you wanted, based on that score, to show them a page, you can set that up.
Okay, cool. What else do we got? They're kind of not a ton today.
Okay. It's probably because I was so clear in my explanations.
Oh, so very clear. It was riveting. No, sorry. I was
No,
trying really hard not to interrupt the Beaverton to Portland, because the solution to that the survey question was don't go to Beaverton.
Oh, that's it, huh? Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Ooh.
As somebody who's from Portland. um if you're stuck while applying logic to questions
Mm-hmm.
and need help, where should I go? Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Is
I
there
would go.
any help in the platform itself that you can view?
There is. So if you click this search button here, you can search for any help files or anything that you would need to. So let's say it's like skip logic. It'll bring up this box here that hopefully you can see, and then you can get help here as well. So there's different things there.
Oh,
You can also get support, and that takes you to different resources, if it's chat, if it's phone, whatever it might be. If you have a support person assigned to you or a customer success manager, definitely reach out to them. They can help as well. But each one of these help files you can search for, and then get instant help here as well.
cool. Yeah, that looks like all the questions for today. You were
Okay.
very clear.
Thank you.
And then,
that's my goal.
and then I made sure we had a couple questions about if this was going to get sent out. The recording and the slide deck will be sent out to everyone who attended or registered, and then you can forward that to your friends if they missed it as well. And then I'm going to drop in the chat channel where you can find all of our previous webinars, such as our extraction logic and even our survey questions and a few of the ones that Dan and I have done in the past. So I dropped that into the chat window for anyone who need it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then one quick thing here before we wrap up. Anytime you see a question mark, you can always click on it and it brings up the associated help file for that option. So you can see looping here. So if I click on this, it'll bring up the looping help file, and then it tells you exactly how to set it up in a few easy steps.
That's great. I should probably spend more time in the platform. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate your time. And Dan, thank you so much for taking your time to teach us about survey logic.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody.